Today our focus is on the very progressive Ethiopian community. The Ethiopian community is the largest African community in Washington, D.C., and Washington, D.C. has the largest number of Ethiopians outside of Ethiopia. In the past 2 decades, the Ethiopians have collectively started and maintained a significant number of businesses in Washington, D.C. So today we will find out how they were able to flourish and become one of the most progressive ethnic groups, making a profound contribution to the development of Washington, D.C., as well as the United States.
And my name is Kibwe, and I'm also the co-host of Visions of Success. And today we're featuring our guests, Mr. Tamrat and Andrew Laurence. And both Mr. Tamrat and Andrew Laurence are community activists for the Ethiopian community. So, we'd like to say thank you very much for coming on the show, Mr. Laurence and Mr. Tamrat. And we'd like you to give you the opportunity to just tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the show. We'll start with Mr. Laurence.
Okay. I have one of those Antoine Fisher stories. I don't know how many people saw that movie. More people should have seen it. But my father came from Ethiopia 50 years ago to Washington, D.C. to advance his studies and go back and lead his country. While he was in the United States, he had a child, and that is me, with an American woman. And make a long story short, I eventually was able to connect up with my family roots in Ethiopia, and I have roots in America. And so I see myself as kind of African American. And that's what I am. And I've participated in trying to somewhat be a bridge, you might say, between the two cultures and find unity in the cultures and ways in which they both can work together, and the reasons that they may not mesh so easily, and try to explain those things from an informative way, doing research and working as I do with the Ethiopian American Cultural Center, where we do research and into the history and also music, dance, and other traditional cultural activities to try to bring that to the community and show everyone what we're all about.
Well, thank you, Mr. Tamrat.
Thank you very much for having me as your guest. My name is Tamrat Medhin. I'm from the Ethiopian American Constituency Foundation. I came about 30 years ago as the Ethiopian monarchy was replaced by a military junta. They were very dictatorial, and they were responsible for the exile of millions of Ethiopians. And at that time I came here and stayed. Before I came to this country, I was a very successful, I have a very successful construction company back home. And I stayed here through the years. I went to school here. I did my graduate work at George Washington University. And I stayed here, and now I'm in real estate sales and development. And what we are mostly doing is we are advocating on issues that are affecting Ethiopians, including like issues that affect in their day-to-day life. Among them, for instance, we were involved jointly with other Ethiopian organizations to have the Ethiopian language, Amharic, to be one of the working language in Washington, D.C. Recently, we are working on a situation where we are trying to recognize our community to be their efforts and work to be recognized by a name to be called Little Ethiopia and other things. So mostly we are doing anything that affects Ethiopians. We try to help out in terms of the advocacy. That's what we are doing.
So I'm wondering too, I know that you mentioned a little bit about the Ethiopians and how they were coming from being in exile. There was a lot of conditions happening in Ethiopia. But I'm wondering also if you can give me more of a sense for the history of Ethiopians in the Washington, D.C. area.
Well, as I mentioned earlier in our discussion a couple of days ago, that the first relationship started in 1808 when Ethiopian merchants came to the United States, and particularly in New York. They came in a position where they went to a church and they were told that they cannot sit among the other people in front. So they went across the street with the rest of the African Americans and started the Abyssinian Church. And the name of Ethiopia, the Ethiopian name at that time was Abyssinian. In honor of the Ethiopian, they named that church Abyssinian. It started since then. And then it continued, and one of the highest situation that happened was also in 1903, when the first treaty between Ethiopia and the United States was signed between the President of United States, President Roosevelt, and the Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie. As you know,
so you're saying that the President had signed a document along with the President of the United States, along with the President, or the King of Ethiopia.
Yes, Emperor.
Okay, that's a pretty significant event.
In fact, I have this, which we
Could
have.
You hold it up to the cameras that you can actually
In fact, this one is the. We had a big occasion at Howard University in March 2004 to honor that, the 100-year Ethiopian American relationship.
Okay.
And then it continued from there, and then through the years we had gone through. Then the next, at the time when this introduction came on, is the President of the United States, through an African American, contacted the Ethiopian Emperor, because the Ethiopian Emperor was very popular at that time, because in 1896 they defeated the aggression of the Italian army. So it made them a very powerful country. In fact, if you read the treaty signed between Ethiopia and the United States here, Article 1 says the citizens of the two powers like citizens of other countries. So Ethiopia was considered at the time as a superpower.
A superpower.
It was considered a superpower at that time. So, and then it continued, the relationship continued, and there were some failure in the Second World War, when over 20,000 African Americans wanted to go back and defend Ethiopia. They were refused. And then also were some problems also in the 1970s when the juntas came. There was some problem with the car. But as a whole, the relationship has been very great.
So you're saying that the relationship between African Americans and Ethiopians go back a far way?
Yes.
Yes, and Tamrat touched on just a couple of points, but you can look at the Tuskegee Airmen, the famous African American pilots. Two of their most famous ones, Herbert Julian, the Black Eagle, as he was called, and the Brown Condor, Colonel John Robinson. They literally went over to Ethiopia, and Colonel John Robinson actually flew planes for the Ethiopian army against the Italians. And he literally started the Ethiopian Air Force. And as everyone knows now, the Ethiopian Airlines has 3 flights a day, very successful African airline right here in Washington, D.C. It was the Tuskegee Airmen who were the start of the whole air pilot and airline of Ethiopia.
So we're saying basically what we're seeing here on the picture that you're painting is that African Americans and Ethiopians really have a very good working relationship, and it's been in place for a very long time. So there's some people say, there's like some suspicion about Ethiopians, and there's some hidden agenda. And from what I'm hearing here, it's totally different. Would you like to explain a little bit more about that? Because people feel that Ethiopians, they're so stuffed up and they don't interact too much with the African Americans here. But from what I'm hearing, that's not the case.
Well, you have to understand that Africans get their information about African Americans from a third party. We know who that is. African Americans get their information about Africans from a third party, and we know who that is. So that cross-information oftentimes is stereotypical from another person's viewpoint, and you see it in the movies, you see it in the textbooks. And so there's a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding about each other's culture. And so when you have this relationship where you run into somebody or you interact with someone, you make you already have a preconceived stereotype, and then depending on that interaction, you might reinforce that stereotype, or you may be able to break that stereotype. I find the most common one that people approach me with is the average brother on the street telling me, "What's wrong with your ladies? Why do Ethiopian women, when I try to walk up to talk to them, how come they don't have anything to say, or they act like they're too good for me?" And I tell them it's nothing personal. It's cultural, in that Ethiopian women and African American women, especially in the past, did want to be introduced to you by a third person who they know and trust, perhaps even a family member. And that is how Ethiopian women would prefer to meet someone, by being introduced by someone who you've now introduced yourself to that can introduce them. And I find that when I tell them that and they really want to pursue someone, they go introduce themselves and say how wonderful they are to a relative or a friend, and they eventually do get the girl. But I think people get the wrong impression, you know, if they don't understand these cultural misunderstandings, and that's where that stems from.
So what is the organization doing to bridge these the two groups together, or to get rid of some of the misunderstandings? What programs you have in place?
We've had a number of programs, Tamrat.
Yeah, we have a number of programs. In fact, through the years, well, I would like to say the ones which are recently, like in 2004, we celebrated the 100-year celebration, where we invited different groups from different universities, and we celebrated about for almost 1 year in different places. There was a celebration held in Stanford University, here at Howard University, George Washington University. And then at the end of 2004, in December 2006, when Kwanzaa was celebrated, the 48th year Kwanzaa was celebrated by the African heritage drummers and dancers, which you met last time, Mel. We were part of that. We had a joint program with Ghana, the Ethiopian Christmas was celebrated together. And then we did the same thing last year also at the Ark in Southeast. We did the same celebration. We had Ethiopian music, Ethiopian coffee ceremony with the other African American groups. The last 2 years also, we did just 3 days ago, we celebrated the Black History Month. We had different people from different organizations came and celebrated that, and we did also the same thing last year. So we are doing a substantial amount of it. In fact, this year's celebration was held on Duke City, is a restaurant in the name of Duke Ellington, which is one of the key person who's recognized, one of the leaders, jazzist there. And we were also lucky to have an individual who met him and who presented him to the emperor when Duke Ellington was in Ethiopia. He was invited in Ethiopia to show the African community that here's a picture of Duke Ellington with the Ethiopian emperor in 1973. And Andrew will explain to you, he has some documents. There is a plan to honor him in Washington, D.C.
So it really sounds like that the relationship is, you're trying to maintain that relationship that has existed always in the past between Ethiopians as well as African Americans. But what I'd like to do is go into this quick message break, but we will be back, and when we return, we're going to talk about Ethiopians and their businesses in the Washington, D.C. area.
We saw that the city council, the D.C. government, put together a multi-million-dollar, multi-year plan for the neighborhood that a lot of people aren't aware of, and that's why I'm so thankful for shows like this. I haven't seen it in the Washington Post at all. Didn't mention earlier the Aksumite civilization, which was based in Ethiopia, was equal to Rome, Persia, and China at the time, according to the historians. They were doing trade throughout the middle of Africa, through Ethiopia, taking ships over to India, throughout the Middle East, and that Aksumite civilization was equal to any civilization on Earth at the time.
Hello, this is Visions of Success, and once again we are returning with our special feature guests. The show is about Ethiopians and how Ethiopians are prospering in the Washington, D.C. area. And as our guests, we have Mr. Andrew Laurence, and we also have Mr. Medhin joining us today. One thing I really wanted to discuss is we just spoke about the relationship, some of the historical relationship between African Americans as well as Ethiopians. We've also spoke about some of the more contemporary things that are happening between the two groups. One of the things I wanted to ask is concerning the businesses that you have. You have a lot of businesses in Adams Morgan. You also have a lot of businesses on 9th and U in that particular area. So I wanted to know if you could tell me a little bit more about the situation with the businesses and how you'd like to name that section, a block of 9th Street, Little Ethiopia, and just everything evolving around that.
Yes, well, specifically with Little Ethiopia, the idea kind of stemmed from the Howard University program we had a couple of years ago recognizing the 100-year anniversary, and conversations were coming up on, just as you said, the amount of businesses and the amount of Ethiopians in the Washington, D.C. area. And we highlighted and documented, as we were speaking earlier, about the relationship. Howard University has graduated more Ethiopians than any university in the United States. Howard University was the first African Studies department in the country. Dr. William Leo Hansberry, who also started the Ethiopian Research Council. You had Dr. Ralph Bunch, Dr. Elaine Locke. These thinkers at Howard University were giving the impetus and the inspiration of looking to Africa, looking to Ethiopia during the Civil Rights Movement. There's a long history, as we said, in the neighborhood, so we thought perhaps in this 9th Street area we might want to recognize it somehow, since in Los Angeles we just got a Little Ethiopia recognized there by the City Council, a small strip of street there where the businesses were. And so we talked amongst ourselves. We broached the conversation amongst the community, what would be a good name if we ever did it. But the reason that we really decided to do this was because we saw that the City Council, the D.C. government, put together a multi-million-dollar, multi-year plan for the neighborhood that a lot of people aren't aware of, and that's why I'm so thankful for shows like this. I haven't seen it in the Washington Post at all. What it is historical heritage of the community, the Black Broadway community, all the Howard Theater, Lincoln Theater, Bohemian Caverns, True Reformer Hall, Dunbar Theater. All of these places are going to be renovated, and I even have a picture here of what it'll all look like. This is a 48-page. The zoning has been done for the neighborhood. They have low-income housing, middle-income housing, lots of jobs. They have cultural historians who went through this. This is a major plan for the development of the Shaw U Street area that very few people know about. And so we thought, as Ethiopians, since they're bringing back this African American history, preserving it, and they're going to recognize it, we had a part to do in the history, and it's just fortuitous that we happen to be building up right in that neighborhood at that time. It was almost inspired when Haile Selassie visited Howard and the neighborhood 50 years ago and brought his elephant tusks that sit at the City Council of D.C. He had an idea perhaps one day there would be this reunion, you might say, of the community. And so we thought, that might be a good idea to sort of integrate us in the community with a little recognition. Unfortunately, some of the mainstream media kind of didn't mention this and kind of spread the word. The Ethiopians are taking over your neighborhood and this and that, and they like to pick up that kind of controversy. But I always am glad to go online, D.C. government, Office of D.C. Planning, and see the Duke plan for the entire neighborhood. You'll see zoning, jobs, and everything. And with this in mind, we knew that would be preserved. We thought maybe we can work in the African connection, and as we like to think, it's all about the African heritage and unity for the future. Economic development, the new economic Pan-Africanism. That Pan-Africanism then was more of a social, getting past laws, for segregation and human rights. Now we see an economic Pan-Africanism with the businesses and helping each other. See, how did we started businesses with practically nothing and sharing that information with the neighborhood so that it doesn't just get gentrified and forgotten, and that we can establish that history again.
And that is what I would like to pick up on, because Mr. Tamrat, and I would like you to say to the African Americans who feel in some way that threatened, if I want to use that word, for you to say something to them, for them to understand that you're not working against them, but you're you should work in partnership with them.
Well, that's how really we have been doing it. As I told you earlier, whatever we have done in the past was in partnership with Howard University. The African department at Mr. Cummings, an African American, was one of the leaders who was involved in this matter. And also, when I put the petition on, a lot of people can see it, they can do on the webpage www.eacf.org or www.ethiopianamerican.org. There's a petition signed by over 2,400 people. I thought that there is a diversity in Shao area. The place which we are asking between T and U Street or 9th Street is diverse because there is about half a block from there is a Westminster Street. And 1.5 block there is a French Street. So it is a diverse community. So adding an African community in the name of an African community, you know, Ethiopianism, the name Ethiopianism has been a name which many African leaders or African American leaders used when they were fighting under Pan-Africanism. You see, it's not that it's an issue of an Ethiopian, it's an issue of a greater, a bigger concept behind it. So that's what we are trying to bring into it. So it will be advantageous for both the communities. As Mr. Andrew suggested that he showed you the plan on Duke, and this additional name will add additional power or name for the neighborhood. That's how I say it.
And I want to say something else, because as Mr. Tamrat just said about, you know, it's a bigger than just the, you know, Ethiopians in the Washington, D.C. The influence of Ethiopia not just stop here in Washington, D.C., because I can tell you about in South America, in the Caribbean, you know, Ethiopia has seen, it's been seen as a very special place to Africans. Would you say a little bit about that?
Sure.
Because the influence of Ethiopia has gone very, very far.
Absolutely. I mean, it goes back to the first people. Everyone on Earth right now is an Ethiopian. It's been proven now. DNA, mitochondrial, out of East Africa, the whole world migrated from African. Everyone is an African, and Ethiopia has been recognized as the first human Homo sapien, and not so much Ethiopia, but that area where Ethiopia is. Right on through the Bible, because Christianity reigned supreme.
It is even mentioned in the Bible, to cut you. Ethiopian is mentioned in the Bible a couple of times. I think it's in Psalms. I can remember a verse in Psalms 68.
Ethiopia shall reach its hand unto God.
Stretch out its hands.
Yes, 40-something times actually in the Bible. Throughout history, even because the West kind of had contact with Ethiopia early on, literally all of sub-Saharan Africa was called Ethiopia. If you look at the maps from 1,000 years ago, Ethiopians were, that was considered Africans, were Ethiopians. And that continued, you know, that idea of Ethiopia until, you know, colonial times, practically. You even have the time of the Prophet Muhammad, when he was just starting out and being persecuted. Many of his followers, the king of Ethiopia, allowed their followers to come and stay in Ethiopia until the hard times were over. And in the Quran, you will see it says never to put jihad on Ethiopia, because they were there in the very beginning of this religion and helped us. And in fact, Ethiopia is literally half Muslim, half Christian, and have a wonderful relationship. So you know the connection between King Solomon and Queen of Sheba, which goes way, way back, and which is the connection between the Hebrew and Christian. So Ethiopia has represented so many things for so many people. The main thing is that they were not colonized of all the African countries, and part of that, at that time, really meant a lot to Africans. They followed it in the Pittsburgh Courier and the different African American newspapers, Chicago Defender, you know, the war, and how the Africans were not allowing European domination in Ethiopia. So today, now, we have the Organization of African Unity based in Ethiopia. Ethiopia is the home of the United Nations Economic Commission. Ethiopia has served as a template or just an inspiration, if nothing else, to Africans worldwide. And even Haile Selassie understood that. His Imperial Majesty, when he said to the world, "Come, this is your home." And the Rastafarians were the ones who really took advantage of that, and they have land now in Ethiopia where they live. But there was a call for African Americans to come to Ethiopia and build it up, build themselves up, and they could always come home to Africa.
You know, it really sounds like to me that with the Ethiopians and the African Americans, it sounds a lot like we're all the same people to me. Just because there's so much of a historical situation there, just because there's so much working together. So it would be, the situation would be more of a working relationship, more of a support-based relationship instead of a competitive relationship, because it all is tying back to the same thing, that we're all the same people. And one thing I'd like to ask both of you is about something that you had mentioned earlier, about a university actually being created in Ethiopia connecting with African Americans. I'm wondering if you could explain a little bit more about that.
Yes, there is a plan to open Ethiopian African American University, but unfortunately, because of the political situation, it's not going anywhere. In fact, I'm one of the board of regents of that. So soon or later, we are trying to work together to bring a university to honor the African Americans. I like also to add that there is one of the highest main street is named for the African diaspora. And there is also another one under the name of another street under President Roosevelt. So the connection is there.
Mickey Leyland also,
yeah,
the African-American congressman who died in a plane crash bringing food. We have Mickey Leyland Way. So,
Mickey Leyland Way.
Yes, yes.
In Ethiopia?
Yes,
Ethiopia.
yes.
Okay,
We've named a number of areas and streets. And as the people go back and forth from the United States to Ethiopia, they have an area, Ethiopia, where they kind of call it, 9th Street or 18th Street, similar. If you go to Ethiopia, they know 18th Street, Adams Morgan. You're 18th. They know all the restaurants. They've heard all the stories, and so they compare themselves. Some of them try to compare themselves to areas here in D.C.
Okay.
So do you have tours going from Washington to Ethiopia on a regular basis? Do you have any tours?
Yeah, a lot of people, they do, a lot of people. As he mentioned earlier, there is a direct flight from Addis to Washington, D.C., Ethiopian Airlines. So a lot of people go and tour, yes.
And you like to encourage more people to visit?
Well, we like to encourage, but the situation right now is not that good because there was some conflict as a result of the election. So I cannot say it's really nice at this time, but eventually it will happen.
Yeah, in fact, right now we're celebrating the return of the Aksum obelisk. I didn't mention earlier the Aksumite civilization, which was based in Ethiopia, was equal to Rome, Persia, and China at the time, according to the historians. They were doing trade throughout the middle of Africa, through Ethiopia, taking ships over to India, throughout the Middle East, and that Aksumite civilization was equal to any civilization on earth at the time. And they built great stone sculptures that actually during the Italian invasion they took one away and was sitting in the piazza in Rome. We just got it back last year, and we're going to celebrate and have a lot of tourism to recognize the Aksumite civilization and the history of that civilization. Many people aren't aware, never heard of Aksum. But if it was in Europe, it would be, like Rome or, the great civilizations of America. But so we're hoping to do tours with that. There are the Lalibela churches, these carved churches and carved in stone that there's a movie, Soul to Keep, coming out soon that Blair Underwood did. He will see Lalibela, and it's part of the story. There's a number of movies that are coming out featuring Ethiopia in those movies, and so you're going to see more and more about it, and hopefully more and more people will come to discover the historical. And there are 82 languages in Ethiopia. There are a lot of different groups in Ethiopia, and there's a lot of different histories and culture within Ethiopia itself. So you can go once to see one group, a second time to see another group, and so we're really looking forward. It's very cheap to go there and to.
Would you say how much it costs to go to Ethiopia?
A round trip right here from Dulles Airport, it's about $900 $99 round trip. And then once you get there, everything is so cheap because the exchange rate is like 8 to 1.
How much was the exchange rate?
Oh, you can get a hotel there for a very nice hotel, $25 a day. You can get a driver and a car for $20 a day, and a full meal will be $5 to $10 with 4 people. So it's a good vacation. If you go into Europe, you're going to pay a lot more money.
Okay, we'll cut it here and we'll come back. We'll have to talk with them just about what is happening in Ethiopia and with the border issues. So stay tuned with us, and when we come back, we'll continue this wonderful discussion.
So they really have an urgency that they must succeed. And everyone talks to each other throughout the day. Are you getting your IRA? Are you putting your money away? And there's a stigma if you're in the community. People will say, oh, this guy's being frivolous, or this person, you know, is taking on too many bad vices. So you have the culture on you all the time from families and friends. As a guide, keeping you in the straight and narrow.
Let me get the first chance. So if there are 20 people with $1,000, then you get the first $20,000, and you will have another 20 months to pay it back. So that's how it's done. It's called the core.
Our special guest today, as we have him here today, is Mr. Andrew Laurence, as well as Mr. Tamrat Medhin. And they are joining us today. They are Ethiopian activists joining us today for this very important discussion concerning Ethiopia. Welcome again. What we really would like to ask and talk about within this segment is just some of the more contemporary issues dealing with Ethiopia, specifically even the situation between Eritrea and Ethiopia as it exists. I'm wondering if you can just tell us something briefly about the situation.
Yes, many people ask me about that because they say, well, what is this Eritrea, Ethiopia? Aren't they the same people or with the same country or something? And, you know, it's typical of a lot of African countries where they have a lot of different groups that were artificially put borders around during colonial times and later. And when they assert their own independence and their own political and economic power, they tend to want to be recognized. And it's very hard to contain, like I said, 82 languages and so many different ethnic groups within a continent. Right now, you know, we have the result of Eritrea, which was a province in Ethiopia, wanting a sense of independence and establishing it and actually receiving it through a referendum in 1991. Since that time, it's been the kind of tension you might have with a brother or a sister who moves next door. You want them in the house, but they don't want to be in the house. And as far as they're concerned, they've established themselves. They have their own state and representation, and unfortunately, they're permanent neighbors. So they will have to learn to interact and deal with each other over time. Right now, they're going through that initial phase of, you know, establishing themselves independently. So there's this tension there. Fortunately, it's been mediated to the extent that the United Nations has brought both sides together, came up with a treaty, border demarcation, because it was never really demarcated when they've separated. So there's little tension along the border, and that's what you hear about, these tensions maybe rising up to something like a war. Right now, those tensions have been mediated by a United Nations treaty, and they're at a point now where they're still negotiating the border and even reparations from past problems. So we're hopeful that it'll be peaceful, that we'll be able to work these things out, because no one wants to see, you know, people going to war in Africa anymore, if possible.
Okay. And I would like to ask Mr. Tamrat about the young people, the young Ethiopians in America, and how this culture, I know Ethiopians are very cultural. They are people who were never colonized by the West, but I'm saying coming here to this country, it's a different culture. How do young people manage to live in this culture and still maintain that strong cultural influence? And would they be able to carry on the torch, so to speak, for the pace that you have set?
Well, we hope so. We always tell them that they enjoy two holidays. Every time when there is a Christmas, an American Christmas, they have the Ethiopian Christmas because they are different. Every time there is another holiday, there is another holiday. But the thing is, most Ethiopians who came the last 30 years, which most of the exodus started about 1975, they talk the languages in their houses, either Amharic or other languages in their houses. Plus, they make their national food. We have, in place of bread, we have injera, as you know, or the Ethiopian wort, which is different. So day to day, that's what they're getting. And in terms of languages, most of them try to pick it up and speak, but the problem is they go out and speak the English language. At home, they speak their own languages. But they try to maintain, at least they can understand it, and they know what their food is. And luckily also there are several Ethiopian restaurants. There are several Ethiopian markets all over the city, or all over the world now, because Ethiopians are all over the world after the 1975. So they have that opportunity to go out and enjoy their food, and they love it and keep it. But we'll see what happens. But I do believe most of them will continue the legacy and go forward with it.
One question that I'd like to ask both of you is that, you know, a lot of other communities are not doing what the Ethiopian community is doing in terms of, you know, setting up these businesses, you know, really helping to support one another. And I'm wondering if you can tell everyone what exactly, how were you able to do this as a group? How were you able to, you know, set up all these businesses? Was it something dealing with the culture that kind of pushed that whole idea, or was it something else?
Yes, I think you hit it right on the head. I think it has to do with culture. You have to understand, when people leave their country and go somewhere to another country, they need a support base. And their support base when they get there are relatives and people, the church. We have our own Ethiopian Orthodox Church. And they really hold on and need those connections to make it their first footing in the country. So making those connections and wanting to be successful, wanting to be able to write home or send money home and say, look, I made it. You know, I'm not wasting my time. If I'm going to not make it here, I might as well be back home with my family. So they really have an urgency that they must succeed. And everyone talks to each other throughout the day. Are you getting your IRA? Are you putting your money away? And there's a stigma. If you're in the community, people will say, oh, this guy is being frivolous, or this person, you know, is taking on too many bad vices. So you have the culture on you all the time from families and friends. As a guide, keeping you in the straight and narrow. And that is something that any culture would want to have to a certain extent. A lot of people, the younger ones, complain about it. You know, they want to party and do their thing, but in the long run, they are thankful for it, and they realize that that helped them to get their foot through the door.
Seeing I'm from West Africa, and I come to the Ethiopian community, and as you said, we're all Africans. Would the Ethiopian community, would they open up their door and accept me as a brother and extend that helping hand to me if other West Africans, or better, you from North Africa, could be from Morocco or wherever, would the Ethiopians open their hands and welcome them in the same way they would welcome someone who was born in Ethiopia?
Yes, I think
also African Americans as well.
I think Ethiopians may be able to identify being from the continent with any African, because they have a common understanding of being from Africa. So I would think that Ethiopians could, and do, I know I'm around them, they recognize and can interact with any African quite easily. And so that's no problem whatsoever. That happens all the time. They oftentimes have in college professional African organizations in college that the Nigerians, West Africans, whoever's in the college, the African students get together and form an organization, and then they also have the African American organization, and the two of them try to do programs together. So yeah, that unity is automatic. If you're from the continent, you have that unity built right in.
And and the unity has already been established in 1963 by the emperor by forming the Organization of African Unity, now which has changed its name as AU. So there is a bigger and greater link among the African communities, including the Ethiopians. And I like to add one small thing before the program ends. There is a big program tomorrow. The 110 years of the Adwa war is being celebrated at UDC at 4200 Connecticut, and I invite all your listeners to go and participate tomorrow afternoon after 4 o'clock at 4200 Connecticut, the 110th celebration of the defeat of the Italian army in 1896.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Another thing that I'm really interested in finding out about is now I know that you said culture also definitely plays a role in the proliferation of all these different Ethiopian businesses. Now I also know that there is some way that you support each other through a collective gathering of money, and I'm wondering if you can explain that, because I think it's a wonderful concept, and I think it would be so great for everyone to know about.
Well, we have what we call it a co. We call it a co. What is it's a kind of group of people together will sit down and put certain amount of money. For instance, if they have an ECO meeting every 15 days or 30 days, for instance, if there are about 20 people, they put like 500 each. Say, for instance, if you want to start a business, you want to put a down payment, or if you want to buy a house and you want to buy for the down payment, you want to get a down payment, you go to the ECO and say, let me get the first chance. So if there are 20 people with $1,000, then you get the first $20,000, and you will have another 20 months to pay it back. So that's how it's done. It's called the co. I think it's a common practice by the Asians, by the Koreans.
It's also done by the Africans.
Yes, yes. Until such times people get their credit and established. But now some of the people who stayed now have gone to the mainstream banking, and they have purchased some properties when the market was at a lower level, and quite few people have been lucky enough to get a decent amount of money from the banks now.
But they still kind of do a little of it for when someone may pass away and we may need to send their body back home to Ethiopia. There'll be money available for that in the community, so no one would have to worry about something like that. You know, emergency, death in the families, we have money put together for those kind of occasions.
So what do you think, in coming down to the end of the program, we would like the listeners to take away something from this program, to learn something, and that's the programs that we're bringing, for them to learn something from this program. What do you think that you would like to say to a young person listening to, hearing about the culture of Ethiopia that is so great? What do you think that they can really learn from the culture of Ethiopia and Ethiopians?
I think the first thing they should do is find an Ethiopian, or an Ethiopian should find an African American and talk to them. Befriend them.
Have dialogue.
Have dinner with them. Discuss with them. They will find out all the questions they had from that one person that will satisfy any ideas they might have had, and go, oh, that's why they do that. Oh, that's how you find out. That you have to communicate one-on-one with the person and really try to.
So how do we set that up? How do we set that up? That communication. Is your organization, well, you have said that too, on the different levels, at the university level and at different other levels, but we probably need to.
Well, we do several programs. We do panel discussions every year, 2 or 3. So in the next one, we would like to include you guys and invite more people.
Thank you.
Bring like a town meeting and develop that relationship. We can do that.
But I really feel it's a one-on-one. Just take it upon yourself to meet someone and get to know them a little. I've had so many people say, there was this Ethiopian woman at my job, and she had this food, what do you call it? Injera, like you said, and it was so good. But then she left the job, and I haven't had any. Well, go to a restaurant. Walk in there. Don't be afraid. Come on in and talk and get to know the people.
We were invited to the restaurant, and we had some injera.
Yes.
And it was very nice.
It was so delicious.
Those who are listening and you want to go
was it the first time?
to the Ethiopian restaurant and get some indira.
Was it your first
It
time?
was my first time.
Very
You've been here for a while,
first
so-
time.
Myself
It
and
was
Tiffany,
mine as well.
and they packed us up with some other. We took home and we had some
It
for
was
the
so
next day.
delicious.
We really
Well,
enjoyed
as
it.
it's Lent now, we have the fasting season where we're not going to be serving a lot of meat. It's going to be hundreds of different types, well, not hundreds, but many, many different types of vegetable combinations and sauces. So if you're a vegetarian or you're in Lent, you're cutting down on the meat and want some fish maybe, it's the best place to come is an Ethiopian restaurant because they literally call it fasting food. For the next 40 days, you'll be able to come by and get some excellent vegetarian dishes.
Okay. But we're coming on, so we'd like to ask you all to give your final, if you have anything to say. Finally, we just want you to give some final thoughts, and we can.
Can I go first?
Yeah.
I really right now think we need to stress economics in business and ownership because that's where we're heading right now. That's what needs to be discussed when we have conversations with each other instead of what's happening, how you doing. Let's say, what are you doing and how is it happening? We have to be proactive and not just react to what's going on, what they throw at us. So I'm hoping that business-wise and economic-wise, people start discussing and conversing with each other so that we can take it to the next level, which is the African Growth and Opportunity Act, to trade with Africa, have our own businesses and banks going back and forth, in the larger global economic community. We have resources, we have skills and knowledge, and now we're in the same neighborhoods together. So I think we have a great opportunity to take the next step of an economic Pan-Africanism.
Thank you.
I agree with that. We have to concentrate on the economic Pan-Africanism and try to work. And I want to tell the African American communities, whatever good we have, also we have the other things like we have the same problems like low income, housing problems, insurance problem, health problem, and other issues that are affect the other communities are part of the problems in our community, and we have to work together to bring some solution to this problem in the Washington, D.C.
Well, thank you so much. I would like to thank you very much for coming on the show. We've completely enjoyed your company, and this has been such a great opportunity to give the viewing audience more information, more real information on the Ethiopian community. And we just hope that, definitely keep up the great work, and you're a great asset to not only Washington, D.C., but also the United States as a whole.
Well, I would like to say thanks to our two guests. We really enjoyed the time that you take time to come and talk with us and clarify some things. We'd like to have you back on the show at some other point when you have the time. We'll very like to welcome you back on the show, and where we can introduce some other topics. Then we can have a little bit more dialogue, so we can have a continuation of where we stopped off. So feel free at some time when you have the time to drop back and talk with us. So once again, we'd like to say thank you very much and on behalf of Vision of Success, we want you to continue to watch this program. We'll be coming on every, I think it's once
every week.
Yeah, once every week. So we'll have some more programs, and we'll have a lot of interesting people coming on our program. And keep looking.
And also, if you have any, if you believe that you're a vision of success, please email us at visionsofsuccess@hotmail.com. Okay, so make sure you email us at visionsofsuccess@hotmail.com. And if you're interested in contacting Tamrat, you can email him at tamrat@eacf.org. So that's tamrat@eacf.org. And thank you.
I'd like to have Tiffany give a few of her thoughts on the show that we had tonight, and about the Ethiopians and what they're doing in the DC area, and what you think that African Americans, and not just African Americans, but Africans in the diaspora can learn from this group, because they've shown a lot of strength, they've shown a lot of unity, and they support each other. And so we just like to reinforce that Africans, they should be a model for Africans across the continent
Definitely.
to continue to work with each other, support each other, try to continue to have dialogue. We like to encourage Africans to continue to have dialogue with each other and work towards a better future for all African people. And as Marcus Garvey said, Africa belongs to the Africans, and we should work towards making that dream a reality. You know, so I don't know what you would like to, what's your take on that?
Well, I think that listening to what the Ethiopians, what they had to say about their businesses and how they've developed, as well as talking about the historical component, I think that it really shows that history plays a profound impact in the success of any group of people. The Ethiopians, they're very aware of their history, not only in Ethiopia, but also in the United States. They have a very broad history, a very wide history. They'd be the only African nation that was not colonized. And they know about, you know, a lot of the issues dealing with their kings and, you know, and it shows the impact history can have on a people. So I believe that people from other cultures, I really think that if they don't take anything else from this discussion, that at least they can take that from the discussion and know that, you know, once you do know your history and learn your history, it will empower you to be able to do all things within yourself.
What do you think when people talk about history? It's like, you know, some people would say to me, what you got to know about your history, because that's like old time.
They say that, they do.
They don't see the connection. And what we're trying to show, or what we're trying to say, what we're actually saying is that history, your history, is like the air you breathe. You need it for life. It sustains you. It's a part of your religion. It's a part of everything. That's your history. History is like the roots of the plant. If you cut the root off from the plant, the tree will die. So your history is your root. So you have to reconnect to that root, and then you began to flourish again. And without no history, you know, people will die. And when you die, they will discard you. So history is what keeps you in existence. And if, as a people, we just want to encourage you all to seek and try to investigate your history. And I think if nothing else that you've taken away from this show, take that from us. We want to encourage you to learn as much as you can learn about your history of your people. Visions of Success is a company that is set up to help bring information, to help to educate, and to motivate people. And that's what we're going to be doing with this show. We want to also let you know that everything that you need to be successful, you already have in you. So continue to look at Visions of Success. We'll be bringing you educational programs, and we'll have a lot of guests lined up that you will enjoy the programs. Thank you.
I'd like to say it's been very good. I'd like to say we've had a great discussion. It's been a very great discussion. But I think the one thing that Visions of the Success really wants you to get from each program is to become empowered. So not only is it information that you're hearing about, not only is it information that you feel good about, but it's information that you will actually work on.
Feel free to email us and at visionsofsuccess@hotmail.com. And we will sit and talk with you, and if we think that it's worthwhile, we'll sit and have you on our program. So feel free to call us. Do you want to give them the number that they can call?
Oh, yes. They can call us at 202-373-1388. So grateful for our featured guests. And I'd just like to say that you, too, can become a vision of success in your lifetime. Thank you so much. And until we meet again, I am Latoya.
And I am Kibwe.
This show is brought to you in part by U Street Parking Incorporated and DBA U Street Motors, UStreetParking.com, and the law office of Samuel N. Omwenga, www.omwenga.com.
Welcome to